CBRE Ellis just released a very interesting report on the global office market. And what it does is that we've questioned 280 multinational companies and asked them in which countries do they have offices. And the results are very interesting. For example, Bangkok comes out as number 15th in the world in terms of popularity of having an office in the city of Bangkok, and 48.9% of the 280 companies surveyed have an office in Bangkok. Now, on average, of the multinational companies, they had offices in 33 countries and 43 cities. For a multinational company, it's actually quite easy to access a large percentage of GDP with a very small footprint. So, for example, if you had an office in just the top 6 countries, you would be able to access 50% of the world GDP. Now, countries with the largest number of companies having offices, not surprisingly, are the world's largest economies. So, for example, 90% of the companies surveyed have an office in the USA. Over 1/3 of these were US domiciled. In terms of country ranking, the US is number 1, UK number 2, France number 3, and China number 4. When we looked at Asian companies with headquarters in Asia, they actually had the smallest global footprint. And 40% of the companies surveyed with a headquarters in the Asia Pacific region actually only had offices in less than 10 countries, focusing mainly in their own backyard in the Asia Pacific region. When we looked at the type of company, pharmaceutical and healthcare companies had the biggest global footprint. That means that they had offices in the most number of countries and cities. Whereas automobiles and car part producers had the lowest global footprint, tended to focus very much on their manufacturing centres. Let's go and turn to the cities themselves. Number 1, not surprisingly, was Hong Kong, with 68% of the companies surveyed having an office in that city. Singapore number 2, Tokyo number 3, London number 4, Shanghai 5, but maybe surprisingly for some people, Bangkok was number 15, with 48.9% of the companies having a presence there. And that shows, I think, the wide diversity of the Thai economy, attracting both companies in the export sector, pharmaceutical sector, professional service sector, and manufacturing sector. When we look at global finance, London, New York, Hong Kong and Singapore, not surprisingly, attracted the majority of banking and finance companies. And professional services tend to very much follow banking and finance. So if we're looking at lawyers, accountants, recruitment companies, they had the largest presence in the same cities where banking and finance companies had the largest presence. When we look at media, telecom and technology, there was a slightly different spread. For example, Hong Kong, Madrid and New York were the 3 most popular cities. When we look at industrial goods, it's very much focused on manufacturing companies. So in Asia Pacific, Singapore, Bangkok and Hong Kong were in the top 10, with Singapore and Hong Kong very much being the regional centres for those manufacturing companies. Now, Bangkok being ranked 15th is very good news for the Thai office market, but sadly over the last 5 years we've had very limited demand in the Thai market for office space. And when we look at the reasons behind that, partly it's been the global economy with the global financial crisis in 2008, partly it's been Thailand's own domestic political problems, starting off with the coup in 2006 and a series of other events that have detracted from confidence in the overall Thai economy. One of the other reasons is that although Thailand is very open to foreign direct investment in manufacturing, it's still very restrictive in terms of company ownership in the services sector. And CBRE Ellis firmly believe that if the service sector was liberalised in terms of allowing foreign ownership of more service-providing companies, that there would be significant gains in in the number of companies who would want to establish an office in Bangkok. It would only take a 6% increase in the number of companies having an office in Bangkok for Bangkok to overtake New York City in terms of popularity of location.